So a bunch of Silent Hill F previews just dropped a couple of days ago from the mainstream gaming outlets, and guys, the one thing we have all been worried about has finally been addressed. It is confirmed that the game officially has a UFO ending. The one thing that is more important than the way the combat feels, how the gameplay and story synergize, or whether the game connects in any way to the established lore, is always and forever UFOs, and they are officially in the game. Now we can all chill, right? Or does there need to be a dog ending too? In all seriousness though, I looked at all the previews, compiled the information, the positives and negatives, and I'm going to go through them with you today. First, I'm going to analyze the general impressions from the previewers, then I'll give you my general impressions, and then I will drill into some of the finer details regarding gameplay and story. Before I jump right into it, remember to like the video and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on all the latest Silent Hill news. Let's see if we can hit 500,000 subscribers before Silent Hill F comes out. Now, let's get to it. The major trades all got access to a 5-hour demo of Silent Hill F, one that starts right at the beginning of the game. This is significant because the overall game is apparently 12 to 13 hours long, so the fact that Konami allowed these reviewers to play 30 to 40% of the game demonstrates that they have confidence in their products. Although, sure, some might say that they've shown this kind of confidence by putting out lesser fare in the past, but I'm more inclined to be optimistic given the almost universal positive sentiment that these previews have. Across the board, whether it's IGN, Polygon, Game Informer, all of them say that the story and the atmosphere are amazing. Oscar Taylor Kent at Games Radar said the vibes the game gives off are, quote, luxurious. That is a great word. He says the game is very distinct and original, what with the Japanese setting, but there's enough there to make it feel like a classic Silent Hill experience. Jessica Cogswell from GameSpot echoes this sentiment. Quote, in Silent Hill F, beauty and decay are interwoven. Flowers melt flesh, clotted rot devours once proud structures. And yet, all of this grotesquerie is gorgeous, both visually and in the sense of somber it stirs. I was moved by Silent Hill F's visuals and the sheer artistry on display. Moving on to Ezra Krab's preview at IGN, which somehow is even more encouraging. According to him, the location that Silent Hill F takes place in, the town of Abisugaoka, is, quote, undoubtedly one of the most impressive contemporary Japanese townscapes I've ever seen in a video game. And that comes from someone who has lived in Japan for the majority of his life and loves games like Shenmue, Persona, and Ghostwire Tokyo. He also echoes what Oscar and Jessica said in that the game oozes with atmosphere, not just in respect to looking authentically Japanese, but feeling Japanese, especially regarding its style of horror. And while we're on the subject of feeling like Japanese horror, another shared sentiment between these previews is that the writer of Silent Hill F, Ryukishi07, is bringing his A game. As somebody who has recently been going through his series Higurashi When They Cry, I really wanted to know if he could condense what makes his work great from a 60 to 70 hour reading experience into this 12 to 13 hour game. Specifically, would he be able to take the most seemingly mundane, innocent things and turn them into the most terrifying thing you've ever experienced? And apparently, so far so good. Ezra summarizes what I'm talking about best. Quote, in Silent Hill F, Hinako, the main character, and her friends are trying to find a way to escape the haunted town of Abisugaoka. Interactions with these friends seem normal at first, but then suddenly they say or do something that catches you off guard. That is exactly what makes Ryukishi's work sublime. It's when a seemingly normal character says something weird. And apparently, I'm about to get more of it. Better yet, according to Oscar from Games Radar, Ryukishi wasn't just involved in the core narrative, but played a big part in making sure that the puzzles in the game always had narrative purpose and resonance. That is absolutely excellent to hear. As for combat, though the sentiment is, again, generally positive, this was the one source of, at best, concern and, at worst, complaint. I'll go into greater detail in a second after I give my impressions, but just to quickly summarize. IGN and GameSpot didn't have anything negative to say about the combat, but Game Informer and Games Radar had some reservations about difficulty and whether the style of combat fit a Silent Hill game. But aside from that, the major trades say that the overall experience is not only positive, but very positive. Now with that out of the way, what is my opinion on these previews and the new gameplay footage we have gotten? Well, When you're a Silent Hill fan, being skeptical of everything you see and hear is as expected as a Pokemon saying its name when it speaks. Unless you're like Mewtwo or Meowth, obviously. Anyway, in that vein, I do have a few more concerns than what I've seen in any of these previews, but thankfully, like these previews, my general sentiment is also pretty positive. I don't think that the game has the potential to be the best game in the series, like Jessica says. Like, for me, that's an impossibly high bar, but I do think it's shaping up to be something special. I want to start off by highlighting two very positive elements that I think should make even the most cynical and/or the most hardcore Silent Hill fans jump for joy. One reasonable complaint that people had about Silent Hill 2 Remake is that running away from enemies or juking them in a hallway was almost never a possibility or valid tactic like it was in the original games. Though I didn't mind this as much as I thought I would with the remake, I have publicly expressed that I wish Silent Hill F or future games would try to get back to this because it did so much to amplify the horror back in the day. Based on all the previews for Silent Hill F, it seems like this method of gameplay has been brought back. Hallelujah, praise Jeebus, this is great news. And moreover, it's very appropriate given that, as we know, Silent Hill F won't have any firearms and, the main character is a teenage girl. All of these factors combined, ideally, could make for more threatening encounters and an overall persistent feeling of dread. Though I have some doubts about this, but I'll get to that in a moment. The second very positive element is that the game appears to have this terror mechanic that seems to be a combination of the sanity system from Eternal Darkness and the panic system from the Clock Tower series and Haunting Ground. In Silent Hill F, the main character Hinako has a sanity meter. The more it decreases, Hinako's perception of reality not only becomes more skewed, like in Eternal Darkness, it also becomes harder to control her movements, like in Clock Tower. This seems like a perfect fit for Silent Hill. And now that I think about it, I'm kind of surprised that something similar hasn't been done in a Silent Hill game yet. Not just because it makes you feel more vulnerable, like I already said, but because it fits in with the lore and themes of the entire Silent Hill series. If everything in the Silent Hill games is a projection of one or multiple characters' mind, then it stands to reason that the more unstable a mind gets, the more one's life is in danger. It's about time they incorporate this into the gameplay as much as they do into the story. Aside from those two big positives, I did find a couple of other things very interesting. The game is going to have weapon durability for the first time since Silent Hill Downpour. As a general rule, I don't really like weapon durability in almost any game, but the one genre where there are a couple of exceptions for me is survival. And given that Silent Hill is a survival horror franchise, I think weapon durability suits it well, for all the reasons I just stated. They just gotta do it better than it was in Silent Hill Origins, where your melee weapons barely degrade and you're carrying 30 of them by the end of the game. And based on everything I read, I think it will be fine. Next, there is a currency in the game called Faith. Not like a microtransaction currency, don't worry, I would be going nuclear on this game if there was. No, you collect faith in the game like you collect, gold in Resident Evil. Then you can use it to spend on upgrades and restore sanity. That could be interesting. Jessica at GameSpot said that one thing you can do is convert stuff like health items or other items into faith, so you can upgrade. But you have a personal dilemma if you want to do that or save them for future encounters. That could either really work or be really frustrating, but I tend to lean towards the former because I haven't seen any complaints about it. Finally, a couple of the previews said that on the first playthrough, you are locked into the canon ending. Then, according to Oscar from Games Radar, subsequent playthroughs not only open up the possibility for other endings, but, quote, will offer new areas, bosses, and branching paths. That's really cool because most Silent Hill games tend to be quite linear, and the things that influence the ending you get are limited to one or two pivotal moments or the player's overall behavior. This could really make the world of Silent Hill F feel more dynamic, like the philosophical journey that Hinako is on could really change based on the morality of her decisions, rather than something ultra-specific or quasi-arbitrary like with the endings for Silent Hill 1 and 2. And for the record, that's not at all a rip on those games, obviously, I love them. I'm just saying that I'm looking forward to something different. Now I've harped long enough about the positives. Time to acknowledge some of the things that might not work. At the moment, there's only one thing that I'm objectively certain that I don't like, and that's the fact that, like with Silent Hill 2 Remake, the cutscenes are locked to 30 frames per second, while the gameplay is at 60. Like, I understand the desire to give the cutscenes a more cinematic look, but I also think that gamers should be given the choice to turn that off, and personally, I would if I could. Aside from that, I just have a few concerns about the combat. So, as I said with the last video I did on Silent Hill F, I think the melee combat animations still look janky, but the same thing was true with the previews for Silent Hill 2 Remake, and I ended up loving it because it felt good to play, even if it didn't always look good. Though I'm going to maintain that attitude going into Silent Hill F, I do really question the way these weapons are impacting the enemies in this new footage. In Silent Hill 2 Remake, whenever James swung the 2x4 or the steel pipe, you felt it land on whatever he was hitting. In some of these Silent Hill F clips, it's like some of the monsters aren't reacting at all. It's like she's hitting the wind. I don't know, maybe it feels good when I play it, but at the moment, I, like a lot of you, find it pretty questionable. Second, the stamina bar. This is the other major thing that I've seen everybody complaining about. Look, I understand where people are coming from. If we took the stamina bar and put it into any Silent Hill game that came out prior, of course I would complain as well. Could it be stupid and out of place in Silent Hill F? Maybe, but I'm not going to make that judgment now. Unlike the lack of impact with the weapons, which is genuinely disconcerting to me, a stamina bar could be fine, as long as the game uses the stamina mechanic less like you would in a Souls-type game, and more to keep you, as I said before, feeling vulnerable as much as possible. If it's the latter, that will be in keeping with what makes good Silent Hill gameplay. If it's the former, then yeah, I think the complaints would be valid from a gameplay as well as an aesthetic standpoint. I, like many of you, like to keep my HUD as empty as possible when I'm playing Silent Hill games, and hopefully that will continue for the most part. One last thing that I'm concerned with regarding the combat is that in virtually all the previews I read, there were comparisons to Dark Souls. Now there is a discussion to be had about whether or not every action game that has a dodge mechanic or a stamina bar needs to be compared to Dark Souls. Fair enough, and there is a reason why game journalists comparing everything to Dark Souls is a meme. But I will say that in the case of Silent Hill F, that appears to be somewhat merited. Unlike Silent Hill 2 Remake, Silent Hill F has light and heavy attacks, like in the Souls games. There's a posture and stagger feature with the enemies, like in the newer Souls games. You can perform perfect dodges and do counterattacks. One of the reviewers said that this particular boss was so hard it took them an hour to beat, yada yada yada. I'm just wondering how well this is going to work and if the game is able to set itself apart from Souls enough and create something that feels appropriate for a Silent Hill game. And more importantly, that feels appropriate for what the lead character should actually be able to do. On that note, about Hinako, Oscar from Games Radar appears to share my concern in that the combat can feel, quote, over-engineered, which could poison the immersion. So yes, I, like many of you, think it's valid to question the combat. With that said, don't forget that there's still plenty of reason to be optimistic about combat and the gameplay broadly speaking, even more so for the story and the atmosphere. If I take all this information as a whole, I'm still feeling optimistic, but I think I have some reasonable doubts. Anyway, I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on the previews for Silent Hill F? Are you still excited? Are you more concerned than I am? I want to hear from all of you in the comments section below. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe for more Silent Hill news, of which there's sure to be much more in these weeks leading up to release. Until next time, remember to stay safe and stay yellow.